Reflecting on it now, I'd never have pictured ending up in a place like this. My relationship with Shannon was something I once thought would be unbreakable, a love so whole that I believed it was untouchable. We met when life was still full of innocent hope. Her laughter brightened my days, and her kindness shaped my world. I was confident that together we could face anything. When we married, I felt like the luckiest man on earth, certain that no one could ever break the bond we shared. But as I now understand, life has a way of slipping past even the most trusting hearts, challenging them in ways they can't foresee. If there were signs, I missed them entirely. For a decade, I gave her my all, building a life I thought we both cherished. We had plans, dreams, and a future as bright as any couple could envision. But sometimes, fate has different plans. In moments of doubt, I wonder if there was more I could have done, some other path I could have taken to avoid the heartache that followed. Now, looking back, I realized that the person I loved was hiding things from me, things that would ultimately unravel my life as I knew it. I came home early that night and saw it, an email notification that stopped me cold. Over the years, I had trusted her completely, never once doubting her loyalty. But after seeing her at the office Christmas party, catching her in a private moment with someone else, and later finding her car outside a local motel, the truth was unmistakable. People say there are only a few ways to discover betrayal, and perhaps they're right. Each clue led me to the realization that the marriage I had treasured was no longer the same. In my case, I was so in love with my wife of 10 years that it took a jolt to realize what had been happening between her and her lover over the past 6 months. I had no clue. Shannon and I met in college our sophomore year, and we were instantly drawn to each other. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, a beautiful face, and a slender figure with long legs. To me, she was perfect. But more than her looks, I fell in love with her intelligence, humor, and joy. I could talk to her for hours about anything under the sun. We became best friends, and after 3 months together, we opened up in ways that deepened our bond. My name is Stuart Gray, but everyone calls me Stu. I was born and raised in a medium-sized Midwest town. I'm 6 feet tall and weigh 187 pounds. Some consider me a decent-looking guy with brown eyes and sandy hair. I'm a contractor by trade, running a small business with a permanent staff of 5. We specialize in high-quality interior remodeling for those who can afford it. Shannon teaches music at a local high school, and together we make a comfortable living. We have a beautiful home, and since we're both in our 30s, we had planned to start a family soon. As I said, our first 10 years of marriage were wonderful. We cuddled every night. It was an unbreakable ritual. Every morning, I'd wake up next to Shannon, amazed at her beauty and how lucky I was to have her as my wife. I can honestly say that while I'd rather live every day with her, I wouldn't hesitate to give my life for her if needed. I probably should have put that last statement in the past tense, as something so unexpected and emotionally devastating happened that I still can't say I've fully recovered. As a Midwest contractor, our work peaks in spring, summer, and fall. People don't want their homes torn up in winter when it's 5 degrees and there's 3 feet of snow. So our vacations typically happen during the Christmas, New Year's holidays or spring break. In summer, when I was busiest, Shannon sometimes took a week to visit family, shop with her 2 sisters, or take a few courses to enhance her teaching. Our favorite winter getaway was somewhere warm, and that year, we chose an all-inclusive Bahamas resort. 2 weeks in paradise, just the 2 of us to reconnect in every way. But I quickly learned how misguided that expectation was. Before Shannon and I boarded our Minneapolis flight, I had no inkling, and I'd have called anyone a liar for suggesting anything was wrong with our marriage. We were the ideal couple, deeply in love and connected in every way, like 2 parts of a single being. Our union was so strong that nothing on earth or in heaven could come between us. I guess I forgot there's also a hell, and although I didn't know it, I was standing at its edge, about to fall into the flames. The first hint of trouble came while we were waiting in line at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The line was long, filled with people eager to escape the cold for a tropical escape. As we waited to go through security, I noticed a man in the next line glance at Shannon. It wasn't unusual. She was a striking woman, and men often looked her way. But this felt different, like he was intentionally trying to catch her attention. I grew curious, pretending to check my boarding pass while keeping an eye on him from the corner of my vision. His glances toward her were subtle, to say the least. Then I caught it. A brief glance from Shannon to him and a barely noticeable wave of her hand, as if signaling, "Not now." He smiled, nodded, and I nearly lost my breakfast. I was stunned. That's when I realized these 2 knew each other. How well I wasn't sure, but that recognition sent up a red flag as we continued through security. I watched them closely, but neither made any further attempt to connect. I grew quiet, though Shannon didn't seem to notice, her mind apparently on something else. I'd hoped that this man, whoever he was, wouldn't be on our flight, but as we boarded and took our seats, I saw that wasn't the case. He was in an aisle seat about 15 rows ahead of us. Oddly, Shannon chose an aisle seat this time, though she usually preferred the window. I had reserved that window seat for her, taking the middle seat myself, so I asked her what was wrong. She just said, "I didn't like my breakfast and didn't want to bother anyone if I needed the restroom." I explained the situation to the woman in the aisle seat, who kindly agreed to swap. Typically, I sleep well on planes, and the long flight from Minneapolis to Miami would have been a great chance to rest, but my anxiety was too intense. I stowed my bag, and after Shannon tucked her purse under the seat, I pulled out my twins cap, tipped it low over my forehead, and pretended to sleep, leaving a small space to watch Shannon. About 15 minutes later, she glanced at me, checked to see if I was asleep, then stood and headed toward the restroom. I shifted to see down the aisle, noticing that as she passed what I now assumed was her acquaintance's seat, she briefly touched his shoulder, as if for balance. It was subtle, but enough to confirm they shared more than a casual connection. They didn't make eye contact, but as she returned a few minutes later, she looked right at him. He stood and walked toward her, and instead of stepping aside, they paused face to face in the aisle. He placed a hand on her waist, and she whispered something with a smile. Returning to her seat, I was left reeling. This wasn't a chance meeting. It was deeper, something that likely had been going on for some time. Suddenly, I realized that my marriage, my seemingly perfect marriage, might be hanging by a thread. As she settled back into her seat, I turned away, asking myself, how could she do this? How long had it been happening? What did this mean for us? I wrestled with these questions for the rest of the flight, hoping the man wouldn't be on our connecting flight to Nassau, though I had a sinking feeling he would be. To my dismay, I was right. As soon as Shannon and I boarded, I spotted him 5 rows behind us, casually flipping through the in-flight magazine, not acknowledging us as we took our seats. Shannon, no longer bothered by any stomach trouble, returned to her usual window seat. The flight to Nassau was uneventful, and after landing, we gathered our luggage, rented a car, and headed to the resort. Driving, I noticed Shannon engrossed in texting. "Who are you texting?" I asked casually, trying to keep my tone light. "Just my mom and sisters, letting them know we arrived," she replied quickly, glancing away. Maybe, I thought, though I wanted to confirm it for myself. It's funny how once suspicion sets in, it grows like a snowball. Our room at the resort was stunning, with a balcony overlooking the ocean and a pool. As we unpacked, I realized I needed to reconnect with Shannon, to remind her how much I loved her. I walked over and softly said, "Do you know how much I love you?" She looked up and smiled. "I love you too, baby." But her eyes held a distant look, as if she were physically there but mentally elsewhere. I pressed on. "You know I'd never do anything to hurt you, don't you, Shannon?" She flinched slightly, just enough to show my words struck a nerve. "Of course, Stu, I know that. And I know you'd never do anything to hurt me or our marriage," I added, watching her closely. Her face fell, and a tear welled in her eye. "Of course, Stu, you know I wouldn't." But she didn't meet my gaze, staring down at the floor instead. At that moment, I realized I might have already lost her, that she had perhaps already given her heart to someone else. I turned away, heading quickly to the bathroom, hoping she wouldn't see the pain on my face. Sitting on the bathroom floor, I fought to keep my emotions in check. My mind spun with questions. How did this happen? What had I done to drive her into someone else's arms? And most importantly, was there anything I could do to stop her from completely destroying us, or was it already too late? I washed my face and left the bathroom to find Shannon standing there, looking oddly distressed. "Oh my God, Stu, I just got my period, and I didn't bring anything with me," she said, a bit flustered. "What?" I replied, confused. "My period, Stu, it just started. I need to go to the gift store to get some tampons." I blinked, feeling a spark of annoyance. "But you just had it last week. How could it start again?" She shrugged defensively. "I don't know. Sometimes it just happens. Maybe it's the excitement of the vacation or something. I'll be back in a few minutes." She left, quietly closing the door. At first, I thought this might be a good thing, that maybe her period would at least cool things off between her and her friend, whoever he was. But then another thought crept in, unsettling me. Her cycle was always regular, like clockwork. And she was on birth control, so there was no reason for an early period. Why make up a story like that, unless she was trying to put distance between us so she could spend more time with him? If that was true, she wasn't the woman I thought I'd married. Feeling sick, I glanced over at her cell phone lying next to the TV. On impulse, I picked it up, uncertain if she'd changed the passcode. To my surprise, she hadn't. Her phone unlocked easily, and I found myself staring at a series of text messages from someone named Anthony Eisner. I scrolled back to the start of the conversation, which began as we drove to the resort. Anthony: "Hey baby, can't wait to have you at our place." Shannon: "You almost got us caught by Stu at the airport, you little brat." Anthony: "I couldn't resist." Shannon: "I almost kissed you in the aisle on the plane." Stu was asleep. Anthony: "You could have, but it might look bad to others." Shannon: "I gotta go. We're almost there." The messages continued once we checked in at the resort. Anthony: "I'm in the lobby. Are you here yet?" Shannon: "In my room. Stu's in the bathroom acting strange." Anthony: "Who cares? When are you going to dump Stu so I can have you to myself?" Shannon: "I told you I can't and won't. Stu is a wonderful husband. He loves me, takes care of me, and gives me a life you could never provide." Anthony: "But you know what I'm better at?" Shannon: "Haha, yeah, you're better at that. But I need more than that, and Stu gives me that." Then I saw it. "These 2 weeks are for you, baby. I told Stu I'd stop taking my birth control when we got home, but I actually stopped 3 weeks ago. Now you have a chance to give me your baby, which Stu will think is his." Anthony: "You're so mean." Shannon: "But I love it." I stopped reading, vision blurring with rage. I was shaking, bile rising in my throat. I had hoped this vacation would help us reconnect, but it turned out to be a carefully planned escape for Shannon to solidify her betrayal with Anthony. I clenched her phone, considering smashing it against the wall, but knew I needed these messages. They'd serve as evidence for the inevitable divorce. Looking out the window to steady myself, my eyes fell on the pool below. My stomach twisted when I saw them, Shannon and Anthony, embraced, laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. I fought the urge to storm down and confront them, knowing it would only make me look like the fool they thought I was. Instead, I grabbed the digital video recorder I'd brought along and zoomed in, capturing every moment. As I watched, a plan began to form. If she wanted these 2 weeks with her lover, I'd make them unforgettable in ways she hadn't expected. I needed to understand how they planned to keep me busy while they snuck off. A dark idea surfaced. If she was using this vacation to get pregnant by Anthony, maybe I'd turn the tables and ruin their plan entirely. First, I'd make her believe I was clueless, the trusting husband she thought I was. When she came back with a small bag from the gift store, I was already in the shower, cooling my anger under the hot water. She called out, "I brought us some water for later. We need to stay hydrated in this heat." "Great," I replied, masking my fury. "I'll be out in a minute." Why did she bring water? The resort had bottled water in all the rooms. And then it hit me. She was planning to slip sleeping pills into it. I thought about my options. If I didn't drink it, she'd suspect something. If I drank it and was right, I'd be out cold and she and her lover would be free to do whatever they wanted. What to do? I turned off the shower and slowly dried off, trying to figure out my next move. Then I heard a knock from Shannon. "Are you okay? You've been in there for a while." Her voice sounded concerned. I wondered if she was actually worried about me, or if she was anxious about being late for her date. My anger rose, but I forced myself to stay calm. When I opened the door, she was standing by the bed, drinking from a water bottle and holding out a second one, already open for me. "We need to drink water with this climate change," she said, meeting my eyes before quickly looking away. I took the bottle and pretended to take a big sip, then turned and walked back to the bathroom. Moving quietly, I spat the water into the sink and poured the rest down the drain. I refilled the bottle with water from the bathroom counter, then returned to the room, where she was busy unpacking and arranging things in drawers. I was certain she hadn't noticed. I continued drinking as I rejoined her, noticing a red dress she'd laid out. "Is that what you're wearing to dinner? If we can't get a reservation, it'll be unnecessary?" I said, trying to sound casual. "You know how much I love this dress," she replied. Seeing that she was dressing for him, not me, sparked another wave of anger. "Well, I brought it, so I might as well wear it," she said with a smile. "Aren't you tired? With all that travel, you must be exhausted." Bingo. I was onto her, but I needed to act oblivious. I needed more proof, so I feigned sleepiness. I took another sip of water and lowered my eyes as though I was tired, even though my heart was racing like I'd downed a bunch of energy drinks. "Now that you mention it, I am a bit tired. What time should we be ready for dinner?" I asked, sounding sleepy. Dinner won't start for a couple of hours. Why don't you lie down and rest? I'll wake you up when it's time to get ready, she suggested so earnestly I almost believed her. I yawned. Okay, sweetie, I could use the rest. Just don't let me sleep too long. I want to spend as much time with you as I can. I love you so much. She flinched slightly, like my words hit a nerve. I love you too, she replied, but her voice lacked conviction. I laid down and slowly pretended to fall asleep. Soon I was fake snoring, and I heard her pull out her phone. Hey, it worked, she whispered. He's out cold. She lowered her voice, barely audible. How long will he be out? We have the whole night together. She giggled, and I nearly sat up but forced myself to keep pretending to sleep. Meet me at the Sandpiper Bar in an hour. I want to freshen up first. She giggled again. You're so bad. I can't wait, lover. Bye. She hung up and continued getting ready for her big night. Barely opening my eyes, I watched her. The anger built inside me, but I kept it hidden. After finishing her preparations, she went into the bathroom to shower. I knew she'd be in there for about 10 minutes, so as soon as I heard the shower door close, I quickly got up and went through her purse. I was looking for sleeping pills or whatever she had put in my water. Finally, I found a small bottle without a label. Inside were a dozen small whitish capsules. This had to be what she put in my drink. I shook out about 5 pills, wrapped them in a tissue, and put them in my pocket. I quickly returned to the bed as I heard the water turn off. I lay down, feigning sleep just as she stepped out, finishing her preparations for her date. It took her another 45 minutes to get ready, but as soon as she left, I got up and dressed quickly. I needed a plan. First, I'd gather more video evidence. Second, I wanted to ruin the rest of their trip. Third, I'd go home early and start divorce proceedings. I intended to be done with Shannon before she had a chance to drain our accounts or cancel our cards. I grabbed my video camera and slipped out. The resort was small, with just 2 bars, both facing the ocean. The Sandpiper was the larger one with a dance floor. I found a spot behind some low palm trees that gave me a clear view of the bar, yet kept me hidden. With the zoom lens on my camera, I got a close-up view. The bar wasn't crowded, making it easy to spot her. She was in that red dress I used to love, but now it only made my anger burn hotter. He wrapped his arms around her, and it took every ounce of my self-control not to rush over and tear him apart. I reminded myself that I was there to collect evidence, not land in jail. I started recording, capturing every gesture, every laugh, every kiss. They looked like 2 lovers on a romantic getaway, completely oblivious to anyone around them. It was sickening. After about an hour, the DJ turned on the music and they started dancing. My chest tightened as I watched them, but I forced myself to keep recording as they enjoyed their evening. After they'd been on the dance floor for another hour, I couldn't take it anymore and was about to go back to my room. My room, alone. Then, I noticed them leaving the dance floor quickly. I cautiously followed, keeping a safe distance so they wouldn't see me. Soon, they reached his room, tucked away in the back of the resort. It was smaller than ours, and on the first floor without an ocean view. This guy must be on a budget, I thought. They went inside, and I moved closer to see if I could catch a glimpse. Luckily, the curtains were slightly open, and the window was ajar, allowing me to hear their conversation and record it all. I was documenting everything. It was nearing midnight, and I thought she would soon leave him to return to me. But then I overheard their conversation. "Are you sure these pills are safe?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. How sweet, I thought sarcastically. "Don't worry about him, baby," he reassured her. "He'll be out for at least 6 hours. He might wake up with a headache, but that's it." "You only used 1 pill, right?" she probed further. "Yeah, just 1, he confirmed. "Why? What would 2 do?" she questioned, clearly uneasy. 2 would knock him out for 12 hours or more. Just give him 1 before bed and we can be together every night. I want you to be pregnant by the time we leave." He then handed her an extra key card. "If you can get away from him during the day, call me and we'll meet here." Their laughter filled me with such rage that I almost threw up. I'd heard enough, so I slipped away quietly and went back to my room. Now I had to plan how to destroy them both and make them feel the pain they'd caused me. It was clear she intended to spend every night with him, so the first thing I'd do was change that. Back in my room, I reviewed what I'd recorded and began putting together a plan to ruin their fun completely. First, I needed to figure out a way to separate them so I could confront him alone. I thought about giving him a taste of his own medicine, maybe slipping something in his drink to knock him out. Then I could deal with him without interference. If he was unconscious, he wouldn't be able to identify me, and I'd walk away clean. But how would I get them apart? That's when I got the idea of giving Shannon a spa day. The resort had a spa with massages, facials, and even makeup sessions. I could easily book a package as a gift, showing her how much I cared. If she tried to refuse, I'd remind her it was non-refundable and guilt trip her, just as she'd done to me countless times. She won't be able to say no to my gift, I thought. It'll keep her occupied for a few hours. That would give me plenty of time to visit her lover. Early the next morning, around 5 a.m., Shannon quietly slipped back into the room. She changed clothes and slid into bed, snuggling up as if nothing had happened. I wanted to push her away, but I lay still, pretending to be asleep, and waited for the right moment. A little after 7, I started to stir and slowly pretended to wake up. Shannon was sound asleep, so I got up, took a quick shower, and went to check out the spa. It didn't take long to find, and I was glad to see it opened early. Inside, a young woman at the counter helped me pick a package. "I'm looking for something that'll keep her busy for a few hours," I said, glancing at the menu. She smiled. "Our Tranquility package includes a massage, facial, and makeup session and lasts about 3 hours." "Perfect," I replied, handing over my card. "What's the earliest time slot you have?" She checked her computer. "We can book her at 2 p.m. That would work fine. I could get her out of the way in the afternoon and have enough time to carry out the next part of my plan." After booking, I returned to our room around 9, finding her still sound asleep. I rummaged through her purse and found her phone, checking the messages. A recent one from him read, "Anthony, you were amazing last night. Can you sneak away from Stu for some daytime fun?" My anger flared, but I kept it in check. When she stirred, I leaned down and kissed her forehead gently. "Good morning, sleepyhead," I murmured, faking affection. "I'm sorry about last night. I fell asleep and ruined our dinner plans, but I have a surprise for you." She smiled groggily. "What kind of surprise?" "I booked you a spa day to make up for last night and to show how much I love you." For a moment, uncertainty crossed her face, and I saw something shift in her expression, like she was second-guessing herself, maybe even questioning her feelings for me. "Is something wrong?" I asked, watching her closely. "Don't you like my gift?" "No, I love it," she replied, forcing a smile. "I just wish you had asked first." I shrugged. "Then it wouldn't have been a surprise. You don't have to go right away. The appointment is for 2 p.m., so we still have time together." "Okay," she nodded. "You're very thoughtful. Thank you." When she kissed my cheek, I could almost catch the lingering scent of her night out on her breath. What a sneaky little cheat, I thought, fighting the urge to pull away. "Why don't you freshen up and we'll go get breakfast?" I suggested. She nodded and headed to the bathroom. As she disappeared inside, I glanced out the window, scanning the pool area below. That's when I saw him, Anthony, laughing and chatting with a couple of young women as if he didn't have a care in the world. I smirked. So he's already setting up backups in case Shannon can't sneak away, I thought. This might work in my favor. An hour later, Shannon and I were at the buffet, filling our plates. She seemed withdrawn, picking at a few pieces of fruit and sipping her coffee. "Not hungry, babe? Is it that time of the month?" I asked. She looked away. "Yeah, I guess so. Just not feeling up to eating." I wondered if she was still thinking about him and whatever they had planned for later, but it didn't matter. I was already setting things in motion to disrupt their little romance. After breakfast, we strolled along the beach, taking in the ocean view. I brought my camera, snapping shots of the sand, the palm trees, and of Shannon herself. She'd smile politely, and I'd throw in comments like, "You're so beautiful," or "What a wonderful mom you'll be someday." She'd flinch, guilt and doubt clouding her expression. "What's wrong, babe? Are you okay?" I asked, knowing the guilt was eating away at her. "No, I'm fine, just tired," she replied. "Do you mind if I go back to the room and nap before I head to the spa?" "Sure, no problem. I know it's no fun being on vacation while dealing with that. Go rest, and after your spa treatments, I'll be waiting for you in your room. I'm sure it'll help you feel better," I reassured her. Without even a goodbye kiss, she turned and walked toward the spa. Oh, well, I thought, she'd be getting the cold shoulder from me soon enough. Now all that was left was to find Anthony and make him pay. As I walked along the beach, lost in thought, I noticed two couples approaching me. I recognized the women from my conversation with Anthony that morning. They were now accompanied by two large men who looked like they could be NFL players. As they drew closer, I overheard their conversation. "Come on, babe, don't be like that," one of the men said. "You knew Dave and I wanted to go fishing, and there were only 2 spots left. We'll be back by dinner." "Sure, you guys get to do whatever you want while we're stuck at the hotel," one of the women complained. "Babe, there's plenty to do here. You could go into town, shop, hang out by the pool or the beach. Heck, you could even hit the gym," he replied. "What, you think I'm fat? You got room to talk," she snapped back. "No, babe, that's not what I meant," he insisted. "I'm just saying there's a lot you could do here." It was clear he was losing the argument as they passed me on their way back to the resort. He kept trying to reason with her, but she wasn't having it. After wandering the beach for a bit, I decided to go back and see what Anthony, the lover boy, was up to. I worried that Shannon might have skipped the spa and was with him, but if that was the case, I might be able to catch more footage of them together. I spent over an hour around the spa area before I found myself outside Anthony's room. I heard voices inside, but it wasn't Shannon's. Carefully, I prepared my camera and edged closer to the window. It was risky in broad daylight, with people passing by who might notice me. I decided to place the camera on the window ledge, facing the room, and let it record on its own. Once it was set, I moved down the walkway to a spot where I could watch the door and see who came out. I waited, and my patience eventually paid off. The 2 women I'd seen earlier with Anthony at the pool, and then, on the beach with those big guys, walked out of his room laughing as if they shared some inside joke. As soon as they were gone, I grabbed my camera and returned to my room. Shannon wouldn't be back from the spa for another hour, giving me time to review what I'd captured. Once back in the room, I pulled out my laptop and downloaded all the footage I'd recorded since our arrival. Most of it was of Shannon, but I reviewed the latest clip of the 2 women leaving his room. Looked like they'd found a way to entertain themselves while their boyfriends were off fishing. Anthony had managed to talk them into a little fun. An idea struck me. If I timed it right, I'd head home, leaving Shannon to wonder what went wrong. I figured she'd try to give me water again tonight, so I'd play along, pretending to pass out. Then, hopefully, she'd meet Anthony at the bar, share a dance, and go back to his room. If I could slip a pill into each of their drinks at the end of the night, they'd both be out cold by the time they got to his room. The timing had to be just right, but in life, perfect timing isn't always possible. The second part of the plan involved recording Anthony's recent exploits on the DVR. I made 2 copies of his activities and decided where to leave them. I also backed up everything I'd recorded on another DVR. Then I sent a disc to my brother Frank's house with a note asking him not to play it or tell anyone I'd sent it, in case my plan went awry, or if Shannon and Anthony caught on. Checking the time, I noted that Shannon would soon finish at the spa. I walked around the resort to locate the rooms of the 2 women and their boyfriends, thinking the boyfriends would be curious about their fishing trip. I soon spotted the women leaving the pool, towels in hand, and entering adjacent rooms, which helped my plan. If things went as they had the night before, I could disrupt the rest of the trip by morning. Back in my room, I called the airline about the earliest flight, managing to book a 10 a.m. flight. It was later than I wanted, but I confirmed our departure at 8 a.m. for family reasons, and the front desk expressed sympathy. Determined to proceed with my plan, I figured that even if it fell apart, I could still catch a flight home before Shannon, and at least annoy her a bit. But if everything worked out, she'd be stuck here for days, giving me time to retaliate. The plan was straightforward. First, let Shannon believe her scheme succeeded, while pretending to sleep so she and Anthony could enjoy their evening. Second, I'd return to the bar, watch them, and wait for the right moment to slip the substance Shannon had tried to use on me into their drinks. If timed correctly, they would pass out just before reaching his room. Third, once they were in, I would move Shannon back to our room and take everything from Anthony: his wallet, cash, passport, credit cards, and clothes. Next, I slipped the DVR discs under the doors of the 2 women Anthony had been with, hoping their boyfriends would find and play them. Anthony's room number was clear on the video, so they wouldn't have trouble locating him. Lastly, I planned to do to Shannon what I did to Anthony: take everything she brought on the trip, leaving her only her clothes and purse, along with a note in her empty purse to let her know who was responsible. Everything was set. Now I just needed to wait for the events to unfold. Shannon returned to the room at 5:30, looking more relaxed and radiant than ever. It hurt to think she had ruined our marriage, and that I would never be with her again. "Stu, thank you so much for the spa day. It was amazing. I feel like a brand new woman," she said, glowing. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I replied, You didn't seem excited when I first mentioned it, but I just wanted to show you how much I love you." I noticed her flinch, and tears began to fall. "Thank you again. I loved it. And I love you," she said more sincerely this time. "Anytime, babe. We have dinner reservations at 7. Let's rest before we get ready," I suggested. She nodded and went into the bathroom with her purse. A few minutes later, she emerged with 2 bottles of water and offered me one. "Here, drink this. I want to go dancing tonight, so start moisturizing," she winked. "Okay, but let me use the bathroom first," I said, giggling. Inside, I emptied the bottle and filled it with water from one of the bottles on the counter, then flushed the toilet to cover my tracks. I returned to the bedroom and started drinking the water. After about 15 minutes, I pretended to fall asleep, snoring while watching Shannon prepare for her date with Anthony. Unbeknownst to her, she went into the bathroom to shower. I quickly grabbed her phone to check her messages. "Shannon can't get out this afternoon. Stu bought me a spa package. I can't say no to that. Do we still have plans, Shannon?" "Oh yeah," she replied. After reading that, my anger faded. I knew the end was near. I just needed to follow them to the bar, watch them dance for a few hours, and slip them a drink. I searched her purse and found the keycard to Anthony's room, slipping it into my pocket as she took her time getting ready. Then, unexpectedly, she crouched beside me and touched my cheek. "Baby, after this week, I'll be all yours, I swear. I just need to clear my head before we start a family. I wish I could explain, but I know you'd leave me. I need you right now. I love you so much, but I have to do this." At first, I thought she knew I was awake, but I realized she was just easing her guilt. It was too late. Soon, she dressed and left. As soon as the door closed, I jumped out of bed, got dressed, and followed her. They returned to the same bar as last night, which was even more crowded. I spotted 2 women with their beach boys. If my plan succeeded, they wouldn't be together until the next morning. I found a spot like the night before, settled in, and began recording the evening's events with my camera. The evening unfolded just as I had expected, with Shannon and Anthony seated at a table, chatting and laughing. As it got late, I realized it was time to get them drinks. I slipped to the bar without being seen, found an empty seat, and ordered a beer while keeping an eye on them. I noticed a waitress taking their drink orders, and, after she placed the order with the bartender, I called another bartender over and ordered the same drinks. When the drinks arrived, I paid and discreetly opened one of the capsules, mixing it into one of the drinks. After stirring it in, I did the same with the second capsule. With a drink in each hand, I squeezed past the waitress, swiftly switching their drinks without anyone noticing. I then returned to my spot outside to watch. It was just past 1 a.m., and if all went according to plan, they'd be out until around 1 p.m. They sat sipping their drinks, and I started to get nervous. What if they didn't finish? Fortunately, Anthony leaned in to whisper something to Shannon, and they quickly finished their drinks and left the bar. I followed them as they hurried back to the room. Shannon began to stumble, and Anthony wrapped an arm around her for support. By the time they reached his door, both were struggling to stay upright. After a few tries, Anthony managed to unlock the door, and they staggered inside. I waited a few minutes, then used the key card I'd taken from Shannon to enter the room. Inside, I heard Anthony slurring, "What's wrong with you, babe? You didn't drink that much." Shannon lay face down on the bed, unconscious. Anthony shook her, mumbling, "Come on, baby, time to do things," before noticing me. "Hey, who are you?" he slurred, attempting to stand, but nearly toppling over. "I'm her husband, idiot. Why don't you pass out so I can take her home?" At that moment, he collapsed to the floor and lay still. I moved closer to the bed and spotted his cell phone on the floor. I picked it up, eager to check his messages and photos. Most were innocent, but I soon found a folder filled with images of women, including several of Shannon and some female teachers from her school. "Well, that's interesting," I muttered. Anthony seemed to be involved with other men's wives. I decided these photos, along with those of my soon-to-be ex-wife, should be sent to everyone in his contact list. It took a few minutes, but I tagged and sent the images to everyone, including the husbands of the women he had photographed. After sending the photos and videos of Shannon to her phone and then to mine, I realized I could use them for my own purposes. Blackmail, you might say. After turning off Anthony's phone, I began packing up his belongings, clothes, toiletries, and other items, into his suitcase. I also searched his pockets for cash, his wallet, credit cards, driver's license, and passport, knowing he'd have a hard time leaving the island without the last one. Once I finished with his suitcase, I turned to Shannon, who was still face down on the bed. I carefully rolled her onto her back and carried her to our room, placing her on our bed before returning to gather the rest of Anthony's things. I kept his phone, wallet, and cash as compensation for this ordeal. I searched his room to ensure he left nothing behind, even taking his shoes. On my way back, I found a trash can and dumped his suitcase and shoes, covering them with trash. Back in my room, I packed my and Shannon's belongings, leaving her with just her clothes, purse, and an empty wallet containing a note. As I finished, I saw it was 4 a.m., and I needed to be at the airport by 9. Since Shannon had stopped drinking around 2 a.m., she'd be unconscious until at least noon. I suspected Anthony would arrive around 10, allowing me to leave before either of them woke up. Before I left, I grabbed the 2 DVR discs I had made earlier and slipped one under each door of the 2 women's rooms. Returning to my room, I looked at the peacefully sleeping Shannon and felt immense sadness. I had wanted to start a family with her, but she had different plans, and I couldn't forgive her. I checked that I had packed everything, then took Shannon's suitcase to the same dumpster where I had disposed of Anthony's belongings. Back in the room, I emptied Shannon's purse to ensure it contained no money, credit cards, or passport. I wanted to make it just as difficult for her to get home as it would be for Anthony. Sitting down, I felt exhausted, but started thinking about my next steps once I got home. Emptying our bank accounts, canceling our credit cards, and moving out of our house. I was determined to leave this sham of a marriage behind. Before I knew it, I dozed off and woke up around 7 a.m. I got up, carried Shannon out of the room, and laid her on a lounge chair by the pool, not wanting her in the room when it was cleaned for the next guests. Back in the room, I grabbed my bags and did a final check to make sure I had everything. I still had Anthony's phone, and an idea struck me. I went back to the pool, picked up Shannon's phone, and began sending the photos and videos to everyone on her contact list, excluding her young nieces and nephews. I then went to the front desk and asked for duct tape. I took out her phone battery, placed tape over the contacts, and reassembled it, making it appear dead. I ensured she had no charging cord, so it would take her time to get her phone working without money. Around 8 a.m., I heard shouting. It was the boyfriend of one of the women Anthony had been with. "You strumpet! Tell your family the wedding is off. Find your own way home," he yelled at his girlfriend, while the other man looked on silently. She pleaded, "Baby, please don't leave me. It was a mistake." But he coldly replied, "You're a promiscuous. Go back to your new boyfriend." I felt a mix of satisfaction and apprehension at the scene. I briefly wondered what would happen to Anthony, but soon I heard the sirens of an ambulance arriving at the building. The superintendent must have called for help, as I saw him leading paramedics to Anthony's room. I hoped he was okay. As onlookers gathered, I calmly caught a cab to the airport. When I turned on my phone, I noticed a voicemail from my brother Frank. "Stu, what the hell is going on over there? I got a bunch of pictures of Shannon. Do you know about this? Call me when you get this message." When I arrived at the airport and was waiting to board the flight, I called him back and explained everything. I shared how Shannon was enjoying herself with Anthony while we were on vacation and how she was trying to get pregnant by him. My brother was taken aback and thought I was joking at first, but then I told him to pay closer attention to the video. He expressed his deep regret for what had happened and said to call him if I needed anything. I thanked him, hung up, and soon found myself flying home alone. As soon as I landed and turned on Anthony's phone, I discovered a dozen voicemails and over 30 texts threatening him with violence. Apparently, the pictures and videos I had sent weren't well received. After grabbing my belongings, I retrieved my car from long-term parking and drove home. During the drive, I began strategizing my next steps. Divorce was an option, but I knew she'd take half of everything, which didn't sit right with me. She cheats and still gets half? It didn't seem fair. Another plan began to form in my mind, and I started mentally listing what I would need and how to go about it. She had destroyed our marriage, and I was determined to make her life miserable. Once I got home, I called my brother and asked if he could help me move my things out of the house over the next few days. I wanted to be done before Shannon came back so she'd return to an empty house. I finally turned on my phone and saw over 20 voicemails and texts, mostly from Shannon's sister, asking what was happening and why Shannon wasn't answering her calls, along with similar messages from Shannon's family. However, there were no messages from Shannon herself, meaning her phone was still dead. I smiled, imagining her reaction when she finally turned her phone back on and saw all the messages questioning the photos and videos she had unwittingly sent. The first thing I did was cancel all our credit cards and transfer all the money from our joint bank account to my personal account. Then I started packing up my clothes and other personal items I wanted to keep. Any gifts Shannon had given me over the years went straight to the trash unless they had real value. If they did, I planned to sell them online or take them to a pawn shop. I immediately disconnected our home phone so anyone trying to contact us would have to call my cell. It was around 11 at night when I finally checked my phone and saw several messages and voicemails from Shannon, indicating she had managed to get her phone working again. The first few messages were frantic. "Where are you? Why did you leave me here? Are you okay? I think someone's robbed me." Then, as she grasped what had truly occurred, the tone of her messages changed. "Why? Why did you do this to me? Couldn't we have talked first?" I ignored the rest of her messages, figuring it would only upset her more. The next day was stressful. I had no idea when Shannon would get home, so I needed to act quickly. First, I went box shopping to pack the rest of my belongings and rented a storage unit big enough to hold everything. Then, I went to the bank and made sure hardly any money was left in our joint account, transferring the remaining balance to my business account, which I planned to close shortly after withdrawing the cash. But there was still more to do before I could leave for good. The house we lived in was small. We had agreed to start small and buy a bigger place once our family expanded. It was a basic 2-bedroom with a small bathroom and a cramped kitchen, nothing extravagant. Since I owned a home remodeling business, we had hoped to transform this house into something special. But now I had other intentions for it. I spent the day gathering everything I needed to make Shannon's return one she'd never forget. Given my knowledge of construction, load-bearing walls, and structural support, I was about to embark on an extreme remodeling project, but not in the usual way. Later that morning, my brother Frank arrived with his pickup truck. After I explained the situation, we started loading the truck with my things, making 3 trips to the storage unit and spending over 5 hours in total. By evening, I had officially moved out. I didn't bother telling Frank about my plans for the house. I knew he'd try to talk me out of it, so I stayed quiet. He asked what I intended to do next. "Just get out of town and put this nightmare of a marriage behind me. I'm not going to file for divorce, but I won't be here when she returns. She can have the house as far as I'm concerned, but that's all she'll get from me." Frank shook his head. "You know that won't work. She'll hire a lawyer and track you down. Just get it over with and divorce her. If you try to run, it'll only get worse when she catches up with you," he said. "I understand you're angry and hurt, but don't let your emotions dictate your decisions. Pull yourself together. Get a lawyer and give her half." "No," I said, shaking my head. "That woman cheated on me, tried to get pregnant by that guy, and was going to pass it off as mine. She doesn't deserve anything, and that's precisely what she'll get. I'm not divorcing her. I'm just going to leave her broke, humiliated, and with her dirty laundry out in the open." Frank knew it was pointless to argue. I was resolute, and he understood that once I made my decision, there was no changing it. He left after advising me one last time to reconsider and not act rashly, but I had thought it through from the moment I saw her with Anthony. Now it was time to set my plan in motion. I began working on the house that night and continued until morning. Since I still didn't know when Shannon would return, I had to work fast. One advantage was the heavy snowfall. A major storm was approaching, shutting down several key airports and leading to flight cancellations, which bought me more time to finish my remodeling project. The additional 8 to 12 inches of snow also helped my plan come together. Having been back for only 2 days, I rarely answered the phone, knowing most calls were from Shannon. Eventually, I decided to pick up her call, but only to gather information, nothing more. "Please, baby, listen. It was a mistake. A huge, stupid mistake on my part. I never meant for it to go this far. I'll do anything, just forgive me," she sobbed on the phone. Her tears didn't affect me, but I knew I had to stay calm, give her a sliver of hope, and then take it away at the right moment. "Shannon, you've hurt me more than anyone ever has. I don't know if I can forgive or trust you again. I just need to know why. Why did you do this to me? To us? Don't you love me? Am I not enough for you?" I spoke in a calm, sad tone, though inside I was boiling. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she was just a lying cheat I never wanted to see again. But I played along, allowing her to think there was still a chance. "Please let me explain. It meant nothing. He meant nothing. You mean everything to me. You're my life, my reason for living. Please, oh God, forgive me," she cried, her voice heavy with emotion. I paused for a moment and then replied, "I just don't know, baby. I loved you, but you broke my heart. I don't think we can fix it." "No, baby, we can fix it. Our love will be stronger, our bond even tighter if we get through this. Please, can you wait until I get home so we can talk?" I could hear the desperation in her voice. "I don't know. When are you coming back?" I asked. "Well, there's a problem. I don't have a passport or a plane ticket. My sister is sending me money since all my credit cards were stolen. Could you cancel my cards for me? She asked, her tone shifting from pleading to matter-of-fact as if nothing had happened. Amazing how you can shift from begging for forgiveness to asking for a favor, I thought, but said aloud, Okay, I'll do it right now. So you don't know when you'll be back? In a few days, I think. I talked to the U.S. consulate, and they're making me a new passport, she said. Well, call me when you're getting ready to leave, okay? I will, Stu, she paused. I love you. I'll see you when I get home. I hung up, satisfied that she wouldn't be back for several more days. That gave me enough time to ensure all the renovations were completed and to set myself up for a fresh start. The next day, Frank called to check on me and invited me over for dinner. I accepted since I hadn't had a home-cooked meal in over a week, living on pizza and takeout. After chatting, I reassured him I wasn't going to do anything impulsive. Then Shannon called again. Hey babe, I just found out I'm getting a new passport in a couple of days. Now I just need a plane ticket home. If I catch an early flight, I should be back sometime in the afternoon. Will you meet me at the airport? I really want us to talk as soon as possible, she said, trying to sound hopeful. That's not a good idea, Shannon. You should have your sister pick you up and bring you home. We can talk when you get here, I replied calmly, leading her on, fully aware that I'd be at least 100 miles away by the time she got back. Okay, baby, I love you, and I know that if you give me a chance, we'll get through this. Okay, Stu? She pleaded once more. Yeah, sure. We'll talk and see. I'm not promising anything, I smoothly lied. As much as she had deceived me, I knew precisely when she'd be home, giving me the time I needed to wrap up loose ends. I sold my work truck and bought a new one registered in a friend's name. Then I informed my employees that I was closing the business due to an impending divorce, apologizing for the short notice. I reached out to an old college friend in Colorado who had once invited me to move there for business. He was surprised to hear about my situation and welcomed me to join him, as his workload had increased significantly with the new marijuana laws. With everything in place, I just needed to leave. Shannon called daily, expressing her love and begging for forgiveness while updating me on her return. The day she was due back, I packed my new truck with only my belongings, leaving behind things that belonged to her. I left early, hoping to go unnoticed, and asked a neighbor to watch for Shannon and call me when she arrived. As I drove toward my new life, I felt my anger fading into calm. Shannon called around noon, saying she'd be home the next day and asking me to pick her up. I told her I had plans and would be home later. I then asked my neighbor to record the surprise for Shannon. The next day, while I was close to my friend's house in Colorado, Shannon called, panicking that our house had collapsed due to snow. Feigning sympathy, I assured her she could stay with her parents, while I had made other arrangements. I felt a twisted satisfaction knowing my remodeling had gone as planned. I'd rigged the house to collapse when she opened the door by cutting support posts and wiring the lock to a winch. I thought, the house fell because I wanted it to, just like you ruined our marriage. After hanging up, I called my neighbor, who excitedly shared that he had recorded the collapse. I asked him to email me the video as a souvenir of the end of my old life. With my former life literally in ruins, I disconnected my phone and headed west for my fresh start in Colorado. Nearly 3 years later, I've settled into my new life, keeping in touch with a few friends from Minnesota, but avoiding family to keep my location secret from Shannon. I later heard that she had a child and claimed it was mine, spinning a tale of my abandonment. My mother believed her until my brother encouraged a DNA test, which revealed the truth. My mother then kicked Shannon out, and Anthony faced severe consequences for his actions and left town. I occasionally reflect on the past, but mostly, I look forward, knowing I've moved on. Looking back, I can finally breathe without the weight of betrayal on my shoulders. Those early years with Shannon are memories I once cherished, now shadows that no longer haunt me. I took back control over my life, even if it meant letting go of the love I once thought was invincible. The scars are there, reminders of the deceit I survived, but I've found peace in knowing I took a stand. Life goes on, I've built a new path for myself, free from the lies. Now, as I sit here hundreds of miles away from that old life, I'm grateful for the strength that led me to a new beginning, a place where trust feels possible once more.